Hello. The emphasis of this longer yin and yang practice will be for the upper body and the shoulders, particularly in the yin portion of practice. In the yang portion of practice, we'll begin with some breath work, some static postures, possibly some balancing, a little bit of vinyasa. And we'll get settled down into the yin portion, which will include both sides of a shoulder opener, and then melting heart pose, both sides of banana pose, both sides of twisted roots, and finally butterfly pose. Some props that might come in useful during the yin practice is maybe a yoga bolster if you have one, or your substitute for a yoga bolster. Some yoga blocks or some books might also be handy. The theme for class is Cepheid variable stars, which are critical to modern astronomy in determining astronomical distances based on their unique properties. And those unique properties were first noticed and discovered by an astronomer about 100 years ago by the name of Henrietta Swan Leavitt. The beginning and the yang portion of practice begins with full body lengthening, laying on one's back. So very gently make your way to lying on your back, arms and legs extended. And for a moment here, just stretch everything out. Maybe think of trying to make yourself as long as possible. So arms, fingertips try to stretch out behind your head. Feet, toes, you can actually kind of point your toes and grow long, maybe one arm and one leg at a time, or a couple arms, or a leg and an arm, and just kind of, maybe almost just kind of push and pull and stretch here. So this is, there's some movement. This is dynamic here. And just notice your breath here. So maybe for one final breath, and then release. Bend your knees, roll comfortably over to one side, come up and find a comfortable, stable seat. I'm going to sit cross-legged here up on a blanket. I'll do a little bit of breath work here. So I'm going to kind of entitle this breath work variable star breath work. And so one thing that is obvious in the universe if you study astronomy is that a lot of the stars actually vary in brightness. They cycle, they pulse, just like our breath. And that's why we're calling this variable star breathing. So when you get settled, you kind of feel some rootedness in your seat whenever you're sitting on. Check in with your breath. Notice how it's cycling right now. So you can start visualizing yourself as a variable star. So as you inhale, you grow brighter. As you exhale, you grow softer, and continue that visualization here. Just with your normal natural breath, whatever it's doing at the moment, and whatever it's doing is acceptable at the moment. And maybe this is what you do for the next couple of minutes. Otherwise, you can try out these counting techniques to lengthen the breath. So I'm going to suggest a progressive breath. So we'll start with what I call 3 to 3 breathing. And that means after your next exhale, when you inhale to a slow and steady count of 3. So that you're at 3 at the end of your inhale, and then exhale to a slow count of 3. So you're at the end of your exhale at the count of 3. So first inhale, 1, 2, 3. First exhale, 1, 2, 3. And continue this breathing. If this is feeling comfortable and you want to try the next stage, then try 4 to 4 breathing. So at some point on your next inhale, slow count of 4, same pace as the 3 to 3 breathing, but now you're adding an extra number to the inhale and to the exhale. So the next inhale is 1, 2, 3, 4. Next exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. After you've done a couple cycles of that, decide if you want to stay with the 4-4 breathing, give yourself permission to go back to the 3-3 breathing, or go ahead and just come back to your normal natural breath, or add another number, go to 5-5 breathing. So on the next inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Continue here with the 5-5 breathing, or try 6-6 breathing, or back off to 4-4 breathing or 3-3 breathing, or just take a break from this here. So for 6-6 breathing, the next inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And as you continue this, I'll just add that all variable stars are different. A lot of them have different kinds. You can group them, but they have different kinds of mechanisms and different periods and luminosities. So they're have about as many different characteristics as us humans do in our breathing. But some of them are very special in that their period, their luminosity, their brightness on the inhale corresponds to each other. One more breath here, no matter what cycling you're doing here. And then go ahead and release, come back to normal, natural breath. If your eyes are closed, you can open up your eyes here. And then we'll start off with some seated twists here. So arms extended on either side of your torso, maybe hands on the floor. As you inhale and sweep your arms up overhead. Grow long here to make it easier for your spine to twist, and then gently twist over to the right side. Hands and arms come down. Maybe the right hand rests behind you. Left hand is resting on your thigh or your knee if you're sitting cross-legged like I am here. Take a breath to grow up tall. As you exhale, maybe a little bit deeper twist here. Stay where you are. On your next inhale, raise the back right arm up alongside your ear, and then very gently laterally bend over the opposite left knee, just as far as you go. It doesn't have to be a deep bend here. And then slowly bring your torso back up and back forward, arms on either side of your torso again. And then on the next inhale, make a big sweeping circle up towards the ceiling with your arms and your hands, and then very gently twist over to the left side. Spend a breath or two here to set up this twist. So again, grow your torso long so your spine is neutral, and then see if you can deepen the twist here on an exhale. And then when you get to your next inhale, raise that left arm behind you up alongside your left ear and very gently laterally side bend over the right knee. Again, just as far as you go here. And then bring yourself back up. Come back to center. You can do a little bit of a counter twist if you want to here. And then from here, we'll do an exercise, a little bit of a seated vinyasa flow that I call a circle of life. You can do it from a cross-legged seated position. I'm going to suggest sitting back on your heels. And if this is accessible for you to knees together, then go ahead and do this. You can also set up on blocks or on props if you need to for extra padding. If this is not accessible for you, then you can come back to your original seat here. And then from here, nice neutral spine. Bring your hands together in front of heart center. And then on an inhale, extend your arms forward and up so that your fingers kind of point up towards the ceiling. Exhale and sweep your arms around and behind you. Interlace your fingers, maybe, if you can do that. If you can't, just fake it here. Elbows can be bent, and then try to straighten your arms back. Extend your sternum and upper body forward. So this is a slight back bend here. And then release your hands, bring your hands together in front of heart center. We'll do this maybe a couple more cycles. So when you get to your next inhale, inhale and sweep your arms forward and up. Exhale, sweep your arms beside you and behind you. Maybe interlace your fingers with your elbows bent. Inhale, extend your arms down and away and maybe lift your chest into a slight back bend here. And then exhale, bring everything back to center. One more cycle here. So inhale, arms go out and up. Exhale, sweep your arms behind you. Inhale, interlace your fingers, extend your arms, slight back bend here. Exhale, and hands come back to heart center here. And then from here, we'll come into table pose. So come on to hands and knees. Nice table pose. We'll do some shoulder twists here in table. So nice stable knee shin position, hips kind of roughly over the knees, but they feel stable here, just to kind of create some rootedness throughout the entire body here. Roots through the left hand. And then sweep the right arm up to the side, up towards the ceiling. And then bring the right hand back down and weave it in between the left hand and the left knee. And gently lower yourself onto that right shoulder here. You can stay here if this is intense enough, or try extending the left arm out long in front of you until you feel a little bit of pressure and stretch in the left side here. And then just stay here for a breath or two. And then after your next exhale, bring the left hand back in, use the left arm to press yourself up. Release the right arm, raise it up towards the ceiling again, and then sit the right arm back down. Other side here. So root through the right hand, engage through the right arm to sweep the left arm out and up, and then bring the left arm back down and through and weave it in between the right arm and the right knee, and begin to gently lower yourself down onto that left shoulder. You can stay here, or you can try to extend your right arm long in front of your head here until you feel some lengthening in the right side body, the right shoulder here. And then just stay here for a breath. After that breath, bring the right hand back. Use that right arm to lift your torso up. Release the left shoulder, bring the left arm up, and then back around here. From here, just a tiny bit of core work here. We'll come into forearm plank. So from table pose, bend the elbows and bring yourself down onto your elbows here. And then extend one leg out, flex the foot, ground the toes into the ground, and then lengthen the other leg out, straighten the knees, and then toes root into the ground. This is forearm plank or crocodile pose. Again, if this is too stressful, you can always put your knees onto the ground. But we'll stay here for about 4 slow breaths here. So again, core is engaged, shoulders are engaged. We're creating integrity through the entire core. So a couple more breaths here. And then go ahead and lower your knees to the ground. And slowly bring yourself back into child's pose. So use your hands and your arms to push your hips towards your heels and tuck your toes. Knees can be together, or they can be, if knees together doesn't work in child's pose, knees can be mat width apart in wide-legged child's pose. Lower your torso forward, and then bring your hands on top of your low back here. Maybe you can clasp your hands here. Elbows are bent. And then draw your elbows up and towards each other. Extend your hands back. And by the way, if you can't grab your hands, just kind of fake it here. And then draw your hands back. And then start to lift your extended arms up overhead as far as they go for you here. So lift, lift, lift. Use a little bit of oomph in the arms here. Keep lifting. One more breath here. One final oomph to lift them. It doesn't matter how high they go. They maybe don't go very high. And then go ahead and release. And allow your shoulders to just droop forward. You might feel some tingling from the intensity of that. And then slowly Slowly bring yourself up. Now we're moving into some standing poses. First, we'll get there through downward facing dog. So come back to table pose, move your hands a little bit forward, maybe a little bit farther apart, and then root through your entire bottoms of your hands and your fingers. Tuck your toes under, root through the bottoms of your toes here, and then lift your torso, lift your hips up. Torso moves back here, and you might have to adjust. As your hips lift, your spine is trying to stay neutral. Your hands and your feet are rooted into the ground. And legs are extended, but they don't have to be straight. Maybe they are straight for you here. One more breath here in downward facing dog. Then look up between your hands and slowly begin to walk your feet forward. Coming towards the front of the mat. We're moving into Ragdoll Pose here for a moment. So, not the yin version of Ragdoll. We won't be here for very long. But feet are comfortable width apart, stable. Legs are extended, but they can be bent if they need to be. And then you can just stay here. You can clasp opposite elbows. You can rock from side to side. You can nod your head yes. You can shake your head no here. And then maybe stay here for one more breath. Then release your hands. Come into a half forward fold. So sometimes it's useful to just place your hands on your legs for stability. As you lift your torso up halfway, lengthen out through your spine to try to bring it close to a neutral position again here. And then go ahead and release. Come back into this standing forward fold. Now we're coming all the way up to standing. I'm going to suggest rolling yourself up slowly. Knees can always be as bent as you need them to be. Maybe roll up from your lower torso all the way up to your high torso. So you roll up through your neck and your head and come into this standing posture that's called mountain pose. Once you get to mountain pose, we'll do what I call castle to mountain cycling. So first, just remind yourself, by the way, this is still the yang section, and I consider mountain pose to be a yang posture. So feet are a stable width apart. You can feel the bottoms of both feet rooted into the ground, and there's a light toning up through your legs to create stability through your lower body, through your upper body, and maybe your shoulders are rolled back just to open up and become broad through the front of the torso. So the collarbone and sternum is shining forward, shining like a star here. Arms are extended along either side. Your palms can face in. I like to turn my palms to face out to roll the shoulders back here. Look off towards an imaginary horizon line and imagine yourself as a superhero that just saved the city. How proud would you feel? And use that energy in this mountain pose to create and cultivate that energy. So this is mountain pose. Now I'll demonstrate castle pose, which is a posture I just made up here. Castle pose is like its name, it's a protective posture. So we're protecting ourselves in a castle move. It means bend your knees, bend your hips a little, shrink down, move your shoulders forward, bring your arms in front of your shoulders. You can make fists if you want to. So you're basically rounding your body around your heart to protect it, like with castle walls here. So I call this castle pose here. And then move yourself gently back into mountain pose. Take your time here, completely unfold and come back to this stable mountain posture. Take a moment to feel mountain pose here. And then slowly roll yourself back into castle pose and just notice how castle pose feels here. Take a moment to really feel this inward feeling of curling up to protect something at your center here. And then slowly unfurl, come back to mountain pose and unfurl and allow things to be exposed in mountain pose here. So one more cycle. So come back to castle pose. Your version of castle pose doesn't have to look like my version, but this kind of inward curling and protective mode here. And then uncurl and unfurl into the majesty of this stable mountain posture. One more breath here. Notice your balance. Notice how you feel balanced on both feet standing here. This is a high wire act to just stand up here. So we'll challenge ourselves a little bit. We might challenge ourselves with seeing what it feels like to stand on one leg rather than two. The next posture is Eagle Pose. We'll do this in stages. So we start out in Mountain Pose, and then extend your arms to either side at shoulder height. And then we're going to cross the arms in front of the body. So right arm underneath left, cross above the elbows, as far as they go for you. Now you bend the elbows, and maybe all you can do is reach your shoulders here. Maybe you can kind of wrap your forearms and find your fingers here. Or maybe you can find these prayer hand postures. These are called eagle arms here. Anyway, all of these are valid wherever you end up here. So this is stage number 1. You can just stay here and feel the intensity of the shoulder stretch for doing your version of this. Stage number 2 is to sit a little bit in a chair pose like posture where you bend your hips, bend your knees, and just come down like you're sitting in a high bar stool here. And just notice how this feels. Maybe this is enough because there's a little bit of core work going on here. If you want to try the one-legged balance, then go ahead and shift your weight over onto the left leg. So the left foot is what we're balancing on. And then raise the right thigh and wrap it on top and over the left thigh. And some of you will be able to wrap the right foot behind the left shin. I'm not going to do that here. So just maybe one more breath here and just play with the balance here. And then go ahead and release and expand and come back to center here. So the other side of that in stages. So arms out to either side in mountain pose, and then sweep the left arm underneath the right, so opposite way this time. And then find your version of eagle arms. Stay here, stage number 1. Stage number 2, come into kind of a seated chair pose here. And this is a good enough eagle pose for most of us. If you want to play with the balance, shift your weight over onto the right foot, lift your left leg and your left thigh, wrap it around your right leg here. And then just notice the micro muscles working overtime here. And then see if you can find your breath. And then go ahead and release the leg, release your arms, come back into mountain pose. From here, get into a little bit more of a vinyasa flow. So some half sun salutations and then a moon salutation here. So from mountain pose, sweep your arms up and overhead. Really lengthen out here. So this is kind of an upward salute here. And then begin to swan dive forward. So hinge from your hips, lengthen out through your torso as you swan dive. Arms come out on either side and then come back into a forward fold where you release your torso, you let it round. Knees can be straight or bent, depending on what you need them to be. Come up halfway into a half forward fold. So hands can root on shins or thighs for stability as you lengthen your torso out. And then come into a forward fold again. And then we're reversing swan diving here. So sweep your arms all the way up and slowly overhead, and then hands back to heart center. Maybe you spend a breath or two in heart center. We'll do one more cycle of that half sun salutation here. So after your next breath, then on an inhale, sweep your arms up, and then exhale, swan dive forward into a forward fold. Inhale up into a halfway lift, lengthen out through the spine. Exhale, forward fold. By the way, you don't have to worry about the breath cadence here, but if you like it, you can try it. And then reverse inhale. Arms come up overhead. Exhale, hands to heart center. From here, if you're using a mat like I am, then it maybe is helpful to set the mat up sideways to whatever device you're watching the video on. And then from here, I'll go ahead and from now on, I will kind of mirror you as we go through this moon salutation. It's kind of involved here. And it's maybe easiest to just follow along and to figure out where you need to be if you have a mat sideways. You also don't really need a mat here. So standing on the left side of the mat, inhale and sweep your arms up overhead. Again, I'm on the right side, but I'm mirroring you. So go up long through your torso, and then do a lateral side bend here. So just kind of shift your hips over to the right. You're kind of pointing your fingers to the left, and then bring everything back up over to the other side now. So gently shift your hips over to the left, fingers point right, and then bring yourself back up. From here, come to a very wide stance. So something about, a meter or 3 feet here. Turn your toes out. We're coming into goddess pose here. So with rooted feet, bend both knees so that they track over your toes, sink your hips, and then bring your arms up into goalpost arms. So nice neutral spine here in goddess pose. And then straighten out your legs, turn your feet forward, pretty wide stance. Extend your arms out straight to either side. This is called 5-pointed star pose. And then turn your right foot 90 degrees. And then hinge your torso. So there's a little bit of toning in the torso to kind of prepare for this. We're coming into triangle pose. So bring the right arm down to the right shin, left arm reaches up towards the right ceiling here. Triangle pose. And then look down at the floor, bend the front knee, bring the back foot in just slightly, and then reset. We're coming into pyramid pose. So sometimes I have to put my hands down to reset. For pyramid pose, it's a slightly shorter stance. Root through both feet. And then kind of extend through the front leg. Swivel your hips towards the right side. Lengthen out through your torso here. And you're just hinging forward as far as you can go, where you're still feeling some integrity in the spine here. And hands can be on the legs or they can be on the sides here. And then bring your hands and your torso, bend the front knee all the way to the ground. We're coming into a low lunge here. So rest the back knee, untuck the back foot. This is this low lunge. Hands can be on the ground. Everything feels rooted here, low lunge. And then from here, we're coming into a side-facing low lunge. So tuck the back foot, put the back foot rooted on the ground, so the back left foot here, and then swivel towards me, towards the video here. So hips are high initially. This might be your side-facing low lunge here. Some people might be able to lower onto this right heel here. And if you can do that, that's fine. You don't have to. This is just a more challenging option here. And then with both hands on the ground, lift your hips up. Come to center. We're coming into a yoga squat here. So kind of bring your feet in, then toes point out, and then lower yourself into a squat here, into malasana here. From here, put your hands back down, hips come up. Now we're reflecting. So we're coming to that side-facing low lunge on the other side. So left foot is rooted, right leg is extended, and maybe the right foot is rooted too. And this can be your side-facing low lunge, or for some people, maybe they can lower themselves down all the way onto this back heel here. Turn and face the left side of your mat and lower that right knee, untuck the right ankle, come into the low lunge on this side here. And maybe stay here for a breath. From here we're moving up into pyramid pose. So at some point tuck the back toe, lift the back knee, bring that back leg in and set that left foot down at an angle here. Start to extend up through the front right leg. Swivel your hips as much as you can to face the left side of the mat. Lengthen up through your torso and hinge as far as you can here in pyramid. From here we're moving into triangle pose. And you can maybe put your hands back down on the ground, reset your foot, back foot for triangle pose, and then begin to extend the front leg, swivel your torso, and then raise the right arm up towards the ceiling. Left arm can rest on the left shin, triangle pose. And then root through your feet, tone through your legs and your hips, and then use that muscular strength to lift yourself up. Toes point forward, 5-pointed star pose. And then goddess pose. So maybe bring your feet in a little bit, turn your toes out slightly, and then bend your knees, sink your hips, goalpost or cactus arms here in goddess pose. Bring yourself up and move yourself over onto the right side of the area that you've been using for this moon salutation. Lift your arms up overhead and lengthen. Exhale, laterally bend over to the right side. Maybe hips have to shift left. Bring yourself up and then over to the left side. Hips might have to shift right for a counterweight. And then bring yourself back to center. And then hands to prayer in mountain pose here. So we need to get back down onto our mat. Just one more little yang exercise, and then the yin posture. So 1/2 sun salutation, could get down onto the floor. So inhale and sweep your arms up overhead. Exhale and swan dive forward. Inhale to a halfway lift. Exhale, fold, bend your knees a lot so you can put your hands on the ground, and then move one foot, leg back, the other foot, leg back into table pose, and then come into your version of child's pose. So it can be with knees together, or it can be knees separated in a wide leg version of child's pose. And maybe just a few breaths here as we transition from more of a yang practice into the long-held yin practice here. So one more breath. And then bring yourself up. And we'll get set up for a shoulder opener that I like to use a bolster for. Now you may find that you don't need a bolster for this particular posture. This is the first long-held posture, first yin posture. We'll hold it for about a little over 2 minutes on a side here, because it can be fairly intense for a lot of people. If you have a bolster, then if you don't have a bolster, then you just basically do this on the floor. But if you have a bolster, then place the bolster, lay on the bolster, prone on the bolster with your left side, your left half of your torso upper torso on the bolster, with kind of the top part of the bolster level to the top part of your head here. Extend the left arm out, left palm faces towards the ground. You're pressing the left palm in. The arm is somewhere between shoulder distance and head distance. You can choose where you want that arm here. You want this left shoulder on the bolster for padding here. And then from here, begin to rotate your body to the right so that you're opening up this left shoulder here. You press in with your right hand to help rotate your body, and you're going as far as you go until you feel stuck, where you can't go. There's too much sensation, too much stopping you, and that's your posture here. So you might have to just stay here with the right hand pushing you up. If you've gone far enough, you can release the right arm, but maybe it's too unbalancey. So to maybe stabilize the balance, bend the right leg, put the right foot on the ground here to create a little bit more balance. And then if you want a little bit more opening in the front of the torso, you can wrap the right arm around here. So these are all kinds of just options, but if you're feeling a lot of pressure in that left shoulder, running down that left arm, kind of gotten the point to this. Head and neck just hang, or maybe you can get an extra pillow to rest your head on here. And like I said, we'll stay here for a few minutes If it's feeling too intense, then unroll a bit. If it's not feeling intense enough, then continue rolling your sternum up towards the ceiling to find your edge here. Come back to your breath. And then use your breath to maybe soften the desperation that you might be feeling in the shoulder running down the arm. Now we're not into nerve pinching here. So if you feel pinched nerves, you might have to adjust the arm, even bend the elbow to get around pinched nerves. But you might feel that wonderful zing of compression and some tension maybe running down that arm here. So just some reminders about practicing yin is the three principles of yin are: find your edge, that's your specific shape that's unique to your diverse body. It takes a little bit of exploration and practice to find that is. I can tell you what it isn't, and it isn't a place of pain or injury. So if you're in that space, that's not yin, that's something else here. So find modifications here. Second principle is, once you've found your stopping points, stay there for a while. This is called stillness. It doesn't mean you're not moving. You can adjust your edge. You can play around with different modifications. It just means you're not jumping up and out, completely out of the posture here. So it takes a little bit of patience. And then finally, we stay for a little bit of time here. Only staying for a couple of minutes on this side. So check in with your edge. Notice if it's gone away, and maybe you can go a little bit deeper, or maybe it is now painful and you need to come out. So just maybe a couple more breaths here. And then slowly bring yourself out. The counter pose to this pose is what I call a systems check. So you want to make sure this arm that you stretched out is still working. So go ahead and kind of just do general motions you want to do. Work the elbow, work the shoulder, work the wrists, make wrist circles to just figure out if that arm is going to work. Get blood circulation back into that arm. And then when you feel ready, it's the other side. Again, bolster is optional. I see a lot of people in gyms doing this particular exercise just on the floor without any bolster. I like the bolster because it kind of pads my shoulder as my shoulder digs into the bolster here. So for the other side, we want to lay on the right side of the bolster. So the right shoulder is on the bolster. Right arm is extended out to the right side. And then use my left hand in the ground to kind of twist, turn my whole body, my torso to the left to open up this right shoulder here. And I just go until I feel a goodly amount of sensation here. And then that's where we stay here for a couple more minutes. And then you find other things that help you. Maybe the balance is feeling a little bit wobbly. So one trick is to bend the left knee, put the left foot on the ground to help control the balance here. You can just keep this left hand on the floor. You can wrap the left hand around here. And then find your edge. Not feeling anything, continue to roll your torso up towards the ceiling. Feeling too much, unroll until the sensations are somewhat acceptable here. And then check in with your breath here. Allow things to soften. So we're using time and gravity in yin to do the work. And we can help, the breath can help be a guide to just kind of give us the patience and this reminder to just soften here. And again, you can come back to this visualization of being a variable star. Maybe you can even out your breath with a very predictable period and predictable amplitude here. That's some of the properties that Henrietta discovered when she was studying Cepheid variables. So Henrietta Swan Leavitt was an astronomer she was born in Massachusetts in the US in the year 1868. She grew up in a very conservative religious family, but she got to go to college and get a degree, an undergraduate degree. It was basically a broad degree. She studied art and Greek and mathematics, and it wasn't until after that she actually got interested in astronomy. She started working at Harvard College as a computer. So she started working end of the 19th century, very beginning of the 20th century. And back then, women weren't allowed to touch telescopes, but they were often hired as what were called human computers to do the hard work of looking at and analyzing the data. In this case, they were the photographic plates of stars that were taken from the telescopes here. So one more breath on this side here. And then slowly begin to unroll yourself here. So again, the counter exercise is to just check to see if the other arm is working here. Bring circulation back if there was some stunted circulation here. And then once you've decided that it's definitely working again, we'll move into the next yin posture. The next yin posture is melting heart pose, which is the yin name for a common yoga posture known as puppy dog pose. Sometimes this is too intense for the shoulders, so there'll be an alternative, and that will be a heart opening on blocks. But I'll demonstrate the yin melting heart here first. So you come into table pose. And then from table pose, extend your arms forward, melt your heart towards the floor. So lower body's feeling stable here, and so you can move things around. Knees, feet can move around to feel stable here. But arms are extended and torso is melting towards the floor until you feel some tension, some traction, some compression in the arms, in the upper body. So among other things, this is a back bend, this is a back extension. This creates compression and traction in the shoulders here. And your head can either your head is kind of on the floor, or maybe your chin is on the floor here. Again, this is not meant to be hard on your head or your neck, so you might have to use blocks under your elbows to create a space for your head and your neck here. If this is not working for you, you can try heart opening on a block, where you bring yourself onto your back and then you place some height, like a block, under your shoulder blades to create some pressure in your upper spine here. And then you use another prop, like a block, as a prop for your head and your neck. Legs are comfortable. Arms are comfortable. Shoulders droop on either side, but there's not nearly the pressure here that there is in melting heart pose. So if you have blocks and you like to do this pose as an alternative, then feel free to do so here. Otherwise, we'll continue on for a couple more minutes here in melting heart pose. So one of the main astronomical observatories in the US was Harvard College Observatory. And it was run by a man by the name of Edward Pickering. And Edward Pickering would hire human computers to look through and analyze the thousands upon thousands of glass plates, photographic plates that were being recorded, to do a survey of the properties of all the stars that could be seen in those plates. And it was a huge effort. It was mainly done by almost exclusively by women, who were called computers, because they could be hired cheaply, but they still had extreme intellectual skill and extreme visual skill to analyze the plates. Henrietta was one of those people. She developed health issues and illnesses early in her life that actually left her deaf. But you don't have to hear to look at glass plates of stars, to analyze the magnitudes of stars. And her specialty that she enjoyed doing was to identify variable stars, stars that actually varied in brightness over time. And she identified several thousands of them over her lifetime here. So about 5 or 6 more breaths here. And at Harvard Observatory, they were observing stars in the small and large Magellanic Clouds when not in northern hemisphere. They went down to the southern hemisphere into Peru to an observatory there to take pictures of the stars in the southern hemisphere, where you can see the large and small Magellanic Clouds. And it was believed that those were islands of stars that were roughly the same distance from the Earth. This is important here. One more breath here. And then slowly come out of melting heart or heart opening on a block. The counter pose to this is Child's Pose again. So your favorite version of Child's Pose. I always recommend sweeping the arms back so that the shoulders can droop forward after all that traction on the shoulders here. So this is now you can understand how this is really kind of sinking into the shoulders and into the upper body. One more breath here. And then we'll begin to move into the next posture here. Next posture is both sides of banana pose. So make your way onto your back. Legs extended out long in front of you. So banana pose is a full body lateral bend, just like the standing lateral bend, only this one is just laying on the ground here. The point is we are trying to open up through either side of the body. So one thing to keep in mind is to try to keep the hips flat as much as possible. So just kind of visualize them being level. They won't be perfectly level. When we move into the posture, one hip will lift a little bit probably. Just not so much that we're just in a side forward fold. So with both hips level, begin to walk and extend your legs over to the right side as far as they go until they just feel stuck here. You can do different things like cross your heels or maybe leave them uncrossed here. And then start to inch your torso over to the right side as well. So you're making this bent shape, this crescent moon shape, this banana shape here. And you'll start to feel some sort of stopping in this left side here. Now you can extend your arms up overhead. You can clasp the left arm with the right hand, kind of pull it up and over to kind of maybe create more of a stretch in the upper left shoulder and arm. Or if that's not feeling good in your arm and your shoulder, you can always just leave your arms released here. And we'll stay here for a few minutes here in banana pose. Your head and neck are comfortable. So if your head and neck are kind of kinked in an awkward position, give yourself permission to unkink them into something that's a little bit more comfortable. Then check in with your breath here. Henrietta Leavitt was like most of the women that was working in the computer division at Harvard. They loved what they did. But again, they didn't get paid much, but they didn't care. They just loved looking at all these stars day after day, and after a while they got so experienced and skilled at looking at them, they could tell right away what the brightness of the stars were, what the magnitudes of the stars were, if the stars were changing in brightness over time. This is what Henrietta got really good at. And she specifically was studying a certain type of variable star in the Magellanic Clouds, and she noticed something spectacular.
This was in the early 1900s, so around 1908, a little over 100 years ago. She discovered that there were certain types of stars whose maximum brightness was related to the period, the cycling period of the luminosity. So the star would pulse just like our breath pulse into a brightness and to a dimming. And they would measure how long it took for the star to go bright, the star to grow dim, and then the star to grow bright again. And they would also measure how bright the star actually got. And she noticed that there's a relationship between the two. The brighter the star, the brighter the maximum brightness, the longer the period. And this is characteristic of these Cepheid variable stars. She knew that all the stars she was studying were roughly the same distance from Earth because they were all within either the small Magellanic Cloud or the large Magellanic Cloud, which we know today to be two smaller satellite galaxies outside of the Milky Way. So she knew all the stars were roughly the same distance, which means if one star was brighter than another, then it appears to be brighter, then it must actually be brighter than another star in the Magellanic Cloud because it's the same distance. This turns out to be critical in determining distances in space, is to know exactly how bright a star actually is as opposed to what it appears on the photographic plates and what our eye detects, because of course stars are the brightness of a star depends on its distance, and it's fundamental to astronomy here. One more breath here, and then slowly bring yourself out. Come back to center. You can do little bits of movement to work out any kinks. I like to just bend my knees and bring my knees into my chest and give my knees a hug. Maybe there's something else that you would like to do to work out the kinks. We have the other side of banana pose here. So extend the legs out long when you're ready. Hips are flat again. And then now we move the body to the other side. So extended legs start inching towards the left. And again, you can experiment with crossed ankles or not crossed ankles here. Torso moves to the left here. The right hip's trying to stay low. It probably lifts up a little bit, but we're trying to keep it low to generate the stopping points and the sensations in the right side here. You can experiment with arms here. And then once you're settled, the thing about banana pose is you can really feel your stopping points here, or find them. May not be much feeling. You definitely get to a point where you stop. And that's basically your edge here. And then you just have to stay for a few minutes on this side. So these variable stars that have this special property is that Leavitt discovered. It's groundbreaking to modern astronomy. We still use this relationship of these particular stars today. The reason why they're called Cepheid variables is the first kind of variable star that was ever discovered was discovered in the constellation Cepheus. It was Delta Cepheid who showed these particular properties, and that's where they got their name, the Cepheid variables. But Henrietta was studying them in the large and small Magellanic Clouds, and when she discovered this relationship, it gave astronomers a tool to actually measure accurate distances out to these stars. And once that happened, her results were written up and released in 1912 under the name of Edward Pickering, because he was the important muckety-muck at Harvard College. She didn't receive much recognition because, of course, all she was a computer. But he did to Pickering's credit, he did say that the report was prepared by Henrietta Leavitt. And so he gave her a little bit of credit. She didn't really care because she just loved doing this stuff. After that, there were huge breakthroughs in astronomy. So this was roughly 100 years ago. 100 years ago, it was believed that the Milky Way galaxy was the entire universe. There was nothing outside of the Milky Way. And with this new tool to measure distance, what we could do is actually really discover how far things were away. Well, soon afterwards, other astronomers measured Cepheid variables to get an idea of just how big the Milky Way was. And they found that it was 100,000 light years across. Not only that, but they found out that the large and small Magellanic Clouds that the Cepheid variables that Leavitt was observing were even twice as far away. They were 200,000 light years away, so far outside the Milky Way galaxy. And then Edwin Hubble, a few more breaths here. Edwin Hubble, the name Hubble might be familiar from the Hubble Space Telescope. Hubble Space Telescope, named after Edwin Hubble. He measured a Cepheid variable in the Andromeda Nebula, and he discovered it to be over 1 million light years away. So much, much farther away than anything inside the Milky Way. And that led to the landmark realization that the Milky Way was not the only galaxy in the universe, and that there were other galaxies far beyond the Milky Way. This was groundbreaking. Before that, we didn't think that was possible. It was just 100 years ago, which wasn't that long. Go ahead and bring yourself back to center. It's all because Henrietta discovered these particular stars in her tireless work here. You can do little bits of counterpose activities here to work out the kinks here. So the next yin posture that we're up to here is twisted roots, which is a twist, but we'll start out with kind of a pre-counter posture that I call resting eagle. So we tried eagle pose in the warm-up, the standing balance version here. You can do another version where you're lying on the floor, so knees bent, feet on the floor, and then raise your right leg up and wrap the right thigh around the left thigh here. Again, you might easily be able to put the right foot behind the left shin. I can't do that without hurting my knee, so this is as far as I go here. Extend your arms out to either side. Make your version of eagle arms here. So sweep your arms up and then pass the right arm underneath the left arm. Bend at the elbows. Make your version of eagle arms like you did in the warm-up, whatever that is for you. So this is resting eagle. This might feel a little bit more stable than the standing balance version. Hold this for maybe a breath or two. Maybe move the elbows up and away just to get some oomph in the shoulders. And then release the eagle arms. You can shake your arms out. Now we're coming into a spinal twist. So take your eagle legs and lower the eagle legs over to the left. So you'll stack the right hip on top of the left hip. And you might have to adjust where the hips are to make this kind of accessible. Knees might make it to the ground. Knees might float. Or if you have some sort of a prop, you can put the prop underneath the knee, underneath the leg, and then it feels a little bit more stable. Right arm reaches up to the right, either in a T or a cactus arm position. Right shoulder's melting back so that you are in a spinal twist. So this is twisted roots. And if the twisted root legs are too intense, i.e. painful, you can untwist them and just do the spinal twist with parallel thighs here. Otherwise, you get a gentle hip opener in the twisted root legs, and we'll stay here now for a few minutes. notice your breath here. Notice the stopping points here. So there's all kinds of variable stars, and they all vary in brightness and pulse for different reasons. The reasons that Cepheid variables pulse is, getting technical here, it's due to ionized helium in the atmosphere of the Cepheid variables. So Cepheid variable stars are actually very large, very bright stars. They tend to be anywhere from 4 to 20 times the mass of the sun. Because they're so much more massive than the sun, they're also much, much brighter, but also short-lived. So they go through their hydrogen field very quickly. They start burning helium. They have a lot of helium in their outer atmosphere. And when that helium doubly ionizes, it gets very dark. And that lowers the luminosity of the star. The star then can't release its light, and so the light is trapped, and that builds up the heat and the pressure inside of the star to the point where the star expands, the gas cools, the helium becomes less ionized, and all that light and energy can escape. And as it does so, it begins to cool off and shrink. So it actually gets bigger and brighter. It releases energy, and then it cools off and softens here. You can almost use your breath to create the imagining of the inhale of the star expanding and the exhale of it softening and contracting here. One more minute on this side here. And Miss Leavitt discovered, by the way, these Cepheid variables were later called Miss Leavitt stars, because they were so useful. So many different famous male astronomers used this tool to just rewrite the books on our understanding of the universe. Using these stars, we figured out that our Milky Way galaxy is not the only galaxy in the universe. We figured out that the sun is not at the center of the Milky Way galaxy. It's in the outer suburbs of one of the spiral arms. There's millions and billions of other galaxies much farther away in the universe. And then our own galaxy is no small galaxy either. There's stars everywhere, and it's all because of these Cepheid variables, these known as standard candles. Henrietta continued to work at the observatory, but she continued to suffer health problems. So unfortunately, she passed away at the age of 53 due to stomach cancer, among other things, other ailments here. But she was always a happy, joyful, bubbly person who never stopped to encourage other people and to give them some encouragement. Everyone said she was a wonderful human being to be around, despite her illnesses. And she got to do something that she loved. In fact, on a census that was given one time, one of the U.S. censuses, she listed her occupation as an astronomer here. So one more breath here, and then slowly bring your knees back up. Unwind the twist here. You can undo the twisted root legs, and a little bit of just counter pose activity. Maybe some reclined windshield wipers, maybe knees into chest, maybe waterfall pose, any kind of movements. We have the other side, so counter pose can be the resting eagle on the other side. So feet back together, knees bent, and then lift the left thigh, wrap the left thigh around the right thigh, make your version of eagle legs, and then eagle arms, extend your arms out to either side. Sweep the left arm underneath the right, bend the elbows, your version of eagle arms here. And then just hold this, a little bit of a yawn counter pose for maybe 1 or 2 breaths. Release the eagle arms and continue on into the twisted root twist on the other side. So lower the knees over to the right, left shoulder tries to stay low, so that your torso is in a twist. Left arm can be out to the left. You can have a pillow or padding underneath that left shoulder. So set yourself up for twisted roots on this side. And we'll stay here. So a lot of people discovered in later years just how much Henrietta Swan Leavitt contributed to astronomical science through the discovery of this special property of this particular variable star, these Cepheid variables. But people did try to give her credit a little bit too late. So there was a scientist in Sweden who was trying to figure out who to give the Nobel Prize in physics to. And he noticed her work. He actually understood that it was her that had done all this work on the Cepheid variables. And so he actually wanted to nominate her for a Nobel Prize in physics. But she died in 1921. And unfortunately, he sent the notification out in 1925, which was 4 years after her death. And they don't give the Nobel Prize to people posthumously. So, unfortunately, she didn't get a Nobel Prize in physics. But somebody thought about it afterwards to try to give her one. So that is actually worth noting, is somebody did try to give her the credit for her achievement. And again, you have to go back and realize she did this through spending all day long, day after day, staring at these black dots on a photographic plate. Basically, the plates were the negative of the stars. And she and a group of other incredible women, including Annie Jump Cannon, among others, did this for years to process millions of stars. First catalog of magnitudes of stars, of spectra of stars, and a variability of stars, a monumental task. And again, back then they didn't have electronic computers. This all had to be done by hand and by eye, by very skilled, experienced, and indeed intelligent human beings here. So about 5 or 6 more breaths on this side. Turns out a normal person can actually detect the variability in variable stars. Some variable stars change several magnitudes over a few days to a few weeks. And if you really study the stars closely, you can detect this change with your own eye. Now, most of us modern humans don't spend the time outside staring at stars night after night to notice the changes in the brightness of stars. But you can notice them. And you certainly can notice them when they've been recorded on a photographic plate. It's much more obvious that they're brighter and dimmer, and that's what these women were doing. And Henrietta understood the variable properties of many different kinds of these stars that tended to grow brighter and grow dimmer here. So slowly make your way out of twisted roots. Take your time to unfold. And then little motions here again. Maybe recline windshield wipers. Or maybe some other kind of movement. Or just resting. Sometimes you can just rest in Shavasana for a minute or so here. At some point, roll over onto one side. Bring yourself up to seated. The last really long-held yin posture will be butterfly pose, this forward fold with a hip opener. So you'll sit with legs extended out in front of you. You can sit up on some height if you would like to. And then you can make butterfly legs. Bend your knees, bring the bottoms of your feet together, and lower your knees to either side. And you can always put things underneath your knees if you need some stability there. Here, under one or both knees. So this is butterfly. We'll add a forward fold to this.
So just slowly begin to hinge forward from your hips when you stop there. Then I'll let the rest of your torso soften and round, however much it does. It might only go a little bit, it might go a little bit farther. If you need support underneath your torso or your head and your neck, then this is where you grab your props here. And be creative, make that support for them here. Or maybe just hanging here is fine too. We'll stay here for a few minutes. So I'll offer something that's a little bit more challenging here. So if you're feeling a lot, this feels pretty good in butterfly, just stay here. But if you can forward fold deeply, you don't feel a lot in butterfly, you want something a little bit more challenging, then I'm going to offer the option of Snail Pose. For Snail Pose, you'll make your way up and out of butterfly. Make your way onto your back, legs extended. Maybe put some padding underneath your upper body here. And then what you'll do is you'll lift your legs and your hips up over your torso. Legs can be straight or they can be bent. And what you should notice is I'm in a deep forward fold right here. Arms are extended out long here. And then just allow, feet can be on the ground, but they can also just float here. This is snail. And just see how this feels. This might be too intense. Or you can just stay there for as long as you can. I kind of have a little bit trouble talking when I'm in that posture. So I'll come back to butterfly. But if you're needing something a little bit more intense, then snail pose can be an option here. So about halfway through here, maybe another minute and a half here in butterfly or in snail pose. So it was getting back to Edwin Hubble. Edwin Hubble used Cepheid. So he learned about Leavitt's stars, these Cepheid variables, and he used them to great effect to understand just how far away other galaxies are. He discovered that the Andromeda galaxy is at least 1 million. Turns out Andromeda galaxy is 2.5 million light years from the Milky Way. And you can effectively use Cepheid variable properties up to about 20 million light years in distance. So all the galaxies up to about 20 million light years, Edwin Hubble just found and observed Cepheid variables to get a gauge of how far those galaxies were away from the Milky Way. But he also discovered their motions. So from the spectra of the galaxies and the stars, you can also figure out how fast they're moving and what direction they're moving in. And what he discovered is that for galaxies that are very far away from the Milky Way, they're all moving away. And so he was the one that discovered that the universe itself was expanding in all directions here, which again revolutionized astronomy. And it comes back to these standard candles that Henrietta Swan Leavitt discovered here. So just a couple more breaths or so. And then when you're ready, slowly bring yourself out. If you're in snail, take your time unrolling from snail. If you're in butterfly, take your time bringing your torso back up. Bring your knees back together. Extend your legs out long here. And then just a little bit of integration before we move into our final resting posture. So we'll come back to this full body stretch that we started practice with. So slowly lay down onto your back, legs extended. Maybe you're already there if you did snail here. And then stretch out through your arms and through your legs again. So visualize, help grow your body long, and you can do this in kind of a little bit of a dance here. So stretch out each or both arms, stretch out each or both legs. And just feel this lengthening, this stretching here for a couple more breaths. And then from here,
we'll come into happy baby pose. So bend your knees, draw your knees into your torso. You can start out maybe by just giving your knees a hug here. You can stay here, or if you want to continue into happy baby, then separate your knees. They move on either side of your rib cage, and then weave your arms on the inside of your legs, and then clasp your shins, your ankles, or the bottoms of your feet, and then point the bottoms of your feet towards the ceiling. Use your arms to gently press the feet, the shins, the knees towards the ground until you kind of feel that stopping point. You can stay here in stillness. You can rock gently from side to side. A couple breaths here. And then release. Maybe knees come back together, one final hug. And then move into your resting pose, your Shavasana posture. It can be, I'll suggest traditional Shavasana here, but any kind of restorative posture or even seated meditation to just be quiet here and to release and relax, and something that feels very, very supported and stable so that it's easier to release tension that can be released in the body here. So soften your jaw, soften your head, soften the muscle around your eyes, soften the skin of your entire face. Soften your thoughts here. Feel the contact points between your body and whatever you're lying on, the floor, or padding, or support. And then at some point begin to tap into your breath. And by tapping in, I mean notice the rise and the fall of your breath. So this is where I'm going to suggest this psychological visualization is visualize your torso, your breath as a variable star. So every inhale, your star grows bigger and brighter, more vibrant. And every exhale, the light dims, becomes softer, becomes smaller. Then on the inhale, the light again increases size and intensity. And then every exhale, it softens, and it quiets, and it cools. And you can continue this visualization for the next several breaths, just to get an idea. What would it be like to pulse like a variable star? Because indeed, we are related to those variable stars in that we pulse too. Our breath is a pulse. Our blood is pulsing. And just notice your own luminosity as you breathe. Slowly begin to deepen your breath. Bring your awareness back into your space. And begin to wiggle some fingers, wiggle some toes. And then expand that motion into hands, into feet, into arms, into legs. Maybe gentle motion with your head and your neck, rocking it from side to side. When you're ready, gently bend your knees and slowly roll over onto one side. When you get there, stay there for a moment. Stay there long enough to cultivate a deep sense of gratitude for your practice, but also a deep sense of gratitude for you, your unique pulsing embodiment in this universe. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And then slowly bring yourself up to a comfortable and stable seat. When you arrive there, bring your hands together in front of heart center. So I will end this practice with an Om. The inner starlight in me honors the inner starlight in you. Namaste.